Hello there. Welcome to my show, COVID-19 Update by Heerak. For October 1st, 2020, we are in a new month. Um, yeah, and I guess a nice way to kick off our new month is that it's National Lace Day. So happy National Lace Day, everyone. Yeah, if you are a woman married to a man, I would encourage you to get like lace items, like lace, anything lace. Guys like lace. It's I don't know what it is. It's most guys like lace. You gotta try. If you're married, whether you've been married for a few months or whether you've been married for a few years or whether you've been married for a few decades, you gotta try. Um, Yeah, it's such hypocrisy when women, dress up to look nice to everyone else, but not to her husband. You gotta make an effort. It's like any relationship. Making an effort matters, and it's important for a successful marriage that you make an effort. And you should focus on making yourself look beautiful for your husband, right? That's the most important thing in your life, right? Your happiness hinges on a successful marriage, successful relationship. Um,
If you see your state, you can register to vote online right.
that's true. If you, you should register to vote. Whether online or mail-in. But most states, I think, register to vote online. So go and vote. As you know, my name is Heerak Christian Kim, and I'm running for independent candidate for U.S. Congress in Virginia's 8th District. So I'd encourage all of you to register and vote. Vote for me, Heerak Christian Kim. Um, I'm official. I'm officially registered with Federal Election Commission. I'm officially registered with U.S. Congress as a candidate for Virginia's 8th District. And I should be on the ballot, but Virginia Governor Northam is playing dirty and trying to block me out of the ballot box. He issued a stay-at-home order on March 30th to last till like June 10th. And the deadline for 1,000 signatures for independent candidates was due on June 9th, the day after the stay-at-home order ended. And I went independent in March. From November to February, I was running as a Republican candidate for U.S. Congress. Then I switched over to independent in March. When I was running as a Republican candidate, I didn't need to collect any signatures because we did not have a primary. We had a convention. So the difference between primary and convention is that in primary, people vote at the ballot box, and then anybody could vote, and whoever has the majority vote becomes a candidate. But in a convention, only the delegates can vote. And so Virginia's 8th district has um, 4 local Republican committees: Arlington County Republican Committee, Alexandria City Republican Committee, Falls Church City Republican Committee, and Fairfax County Republican Committee. So the delegates from these 4 areas come and they cast a vote. And whichever candidate gets the most votes from these delegates, you have to apply to be a delegate and become a delegate. So there's a process at every local unit. Whoever gets the most vote of the delegates becomes a Republican candidate. So only people you have to persuade are the delegates. So from November, to the convention date, candidates generally call and contact the delegates to get them to vote for them. Because all you need is the majority of the delegates. I believe I would have won, but there are some factors beyond my control that kind of propelled me to switch over to the independent party. So I didn't get to go to the convention. And so I switched over in March. And as soon as I switched over, basically, the state's shutting down, and Governor Northam issues a stay-at-home order from March 30th to June 10th. So I can't collect any signatures. So, I wrote to Virginia Board of Elections, Virginia Department of Elections, asking for a waiver of the 1,000 signatures. I mean, the state's shut down. It's illegal to go door to door and knock and collect signatures when stay-at-home order is in effect. So, I mean, it's reasonable for me to request waiver of signatures. And I'm sure Chip Piper, the commissioner, the head honcho of the Virginia Department of Elections, agree. But he wrote a letter back saying, I don't have a legal authority to give you a waiver. So, I wrote to Virginia Governor Northam, who issued a stay-at-home order, because he's the governor, and he could give me a waiver. So, so I asked him for a waiver, and I haven't heard back from him. Now he has COVID-19. He and his wife, they both got COVID-19 from Prince William County Public Schools visit. They visited Prince William County Public Schools, and they got COVID from their visit of the school. So you can imagine how many school teachers, how many school students would die, and staff would die from COVID-19 during the 6-month-long flu season. You can get an idea, right? Governor Northam did not get COVID-19 anywhere, and he's been moving around as a politician. But he goes to a school district, school visit, and he gets COVID, he and his wife. So, you can see how bad it is going to be for schools, school students, school teachers, school staff, and parents who have students going to school. This is why I lobbied for 3 months to have Virginia 8th District Public Schools shut down. Arlington County Public Schools, Alexandria City Public Schools, Arlington Public Schools, Fairfax City Public Schools, Falls Church Public Schools. So 4 public school districts I worked hard to shut down. Yeah, and I succeeded. I worked really hard to shut the schools down because I knew that children would die. I knew the teachers would die. I knew staff would die. That's why I worked hard to shut the schools down. And that's why, I'm better than Don Beyer. And that's why you should vote for me for US Congressman Virginia's 8th District. Yeah, because, you're going to have COVID-19 for next 2 years, for sure, until the next election for US Congress in 2022. You're going to have COVID-19 proliferating and killing like more than 1,000 a day, every day in the United States. So you need somebody out there who is going to help you and your family survive COVID-19. I've proven track record of helping you and your children, your family survive COVID-19. That's why you need to vote for me. But because of, Virginia Governor Northam hasn't written back or given me a waiver, I filed a lawsuit at Arlington Circuit Court on June 3rd, 6 days before the deadline, requesting that the courts require my name to be placed on the ballot. So that's in the Arlington Circuit Court system, but because of COVID-19, everything has slowed down in the Arlington Circuit Courts because judges are working from home, lawyers are working from home, practically everybody's working from home, so everything has slowed down. Obviously, it's worth saving a lot of lives, right? Not to have the court open. But unfortunately, that has slowed the system down. And so, yeah, so things are slowed down. So what that means is you have to write my name into the ballot, Heerak Christian Kim. If you got an absentee ballot, or if you're early voting, just write my name in Heerak Christian Kim, and you see my name spelled right there in your screen. Write it down on a piece of paper. Make sure you spell it correctly. Write that down for Virginia's 8th District. And I'm sure eventually by November 3rd, my name will be placed into the ballot by court order by Arlington Circuit Court. But the process is taking longer than expected. So, yeah, so vote for me. Obviously, you need me to represent you. So what's in it for you? Your survival of COVID-19. your children survive of COVID-19. As you know, Heerak Christian Kim, that's who I am. I'm Leonardo da Vinci of 21st century. So if Heerak cannot save you and your children from COVID-19, no one can. You know, I, Heerak Christian Kim, have been consistently right about COVID-19. When Dr. Fauci, Dr. Han, Dr. Gupta, Dr. Gottlieb, Emerald Gurr, and Surgeon General Adams were telling you not to wear a mask in March and April, I was telling you to wear a mask. Yeah, I mean, you go back and see my show. Started on April 2nd, so you could watch all the back episodes on my YouTube channel, Heerak Christian Kim for Congress, a YouTube channel. You can see what I said. And so I've been consistently right. The whole world has come to Heerak Christian Kim's position and is telling everybody to wear a mask. That shows what kind of leader I am, that I'm the leader that you need. I've said COVID-19 is airborne, and I even wrote a poem because every Monday I write a poem and post it on my Twitter account, Heerak #4 Congress, Heerak for Congress, Heerak #4 Congress, and I wrote a poem, COVID-19 going airborne, like months ago, you know, and so you know, I'm like a visionary, you know, and I state things based on evidence, rational and logical deduction, and interdisciplinary approach to COVID-19. So I have a holistic approach to COVID-19 that often proves to be very accurate. So I'm sure Dr. Fauci is watching my show every day, Dr. Han, Dr. Gottlieb, Dr. Redfield, Dr. Gupta, because I've been consistently right even when they were wrong. I said if you open up schools, COVID-19 will proliferate. I was right, right? You see COVID-19 spiking everywhere in America because schools opened up, colleges opened up. I worked hard to close down Georgetown University. I worked for 3 months to make sure Georgetown doesn't open its campus because I didn't want Georgetown students to die. I mean, I'm talking about my friends, professors I like, you know, who are also my friends, staff members I like, who are also my friends. You know, I don't want my friends to die. So that was a personal reason that I worked for 3 months to shut Georgetown University down. I didn't want my friends to die. It's a person-to-person infection, and you could get it just by people breathing on you. You know how infectious COVID-19 is? It's a guaranteed death if you get it in the flu season and you have pre-existing conditions like, you know, diabetes, or if you're fat, and like over 50% of Americans are fat. Yeah, it's like, you know, you're headed toward death. Obviously, there's a difference between how fat you are. You know, if you're a little bit fat, it's different from if you're very fat. But you know, being fat is a medical condition, right? It compromises all your systems, and you know, and you know, if you have asthma or you have like peanut allergies, or you know, your body system is compromised. If you have like an illness or a chronic disease, oh yeah, I mean, you're looking at COVID-19 death if you get it. So it's going to be very serious, and the flu season is 6 months long. It's like from like October to April. You know, you could begin like end of September, but generally from October to April, it's like 6 months long. And so, you know, I'm predicting that minimum 3 million Americans will die. That's 60,000 Americans per state, which equals to like 3 million in the United States. You could easily have 60,000 die every state. Every state could have 60,000 die, minimum. You know, as you know, there have been spikes in Florida, California, Texas, continuing, and you can expect these states to have minimum 60,000. They could have up to like 1 million die, or maybe even more. So, you know, my bottom prediction is 3 million. We're going to have minimum 3 million die in the 6 month of flu season, but we'll have more like 20 to 30 million die. That's my, you know, like upper estimate. So 3 to 20, 30, or 3 to like 20 million, 25 million will die in this flu season, 6 months. So that's my prediction. Um, Places that are hot spots like California, Florida, Texas, they continue to be hot spots. New York and New Jersey had a short respite during summer, but now they're beginning to become hot spots. So we know they're going to have hundreds of thousands of deaths minimum, probably more than that. New York will have more than 1 million dying. And we know Virginia has a constant death, like dozens dying every day right now. That's going to eventually go to hundreds dying every day. And it may even go to thousands dying every day. So that's what Virginia is looking at right now. And like there are many states where dozens are dying every day. You know, this is a serious problem. Because schools open up, like Prince William County Public Schools, where Virginia Governor Northam and his wife Pam Northam got COVID-19. If they didn't visit the school, they wouldn't have gotten COVID. So you can imagine what's going to happen to children and parents of Prince William Public Schools in Northern Virginia. Prince William County Public School teachers, many of them are going to die. So I'm going to give you a challenge. You know, start comparing Virginia's 8th district or Arlington County Public Schools to like Prince William County Public Schools, and compare how many people die, like students, parents, and teachers. I guarantee it. There will be thousands more in Prince William County Public Schools dying. Thousands more. So see how I've saved your life? Obviously, you know, the death is beginning because we have 6 months ahead of us. That's a half a year. I'm estimating minimum 100,000 people will die in the state of Virginia, minimum 100,000. But it could be far more than that. I mean, you know, there's no laws that says million Virginians cannot die. Million Virginians can die. But I'm saying minimum 100,000 Virginians will die. At the current rate, we have dozens dying already. In 6 months, let's say if you have 10 people dying every day for 1 month, that's like 30 days, right? So you have 300 people dying. If you have 20 people dying every day, you have like 600 die, right? If you have 30 dying every day, you have like 900 die per month. If you have like 100 dying per day, then you're going to have like 3,000 die per month. If you see how that's going. If you have 200 dying per day during flu season in Virginia, you're going to have 6,000 die per month. You can see how easily, you know, this can spiral out of control. And as you know, Florida had like what 200-300 people die per day during summer. So you know, Florida, you could have like easily have 200-300 people die, even like 2,000-3,000 people die in the winter. Now experts are coming to my position, and some have estimated that there could be 30,000 people who die per day. That's possible in America. America alone can have over 30,000 deaths per day in the flu season. You should not be surprised if that happens. This is a virus that kills. A virus that killed 1,000 per day in August, month of August. So you should not be surprised if it kills like 30,000 per day in October or November, right? Because in the flu season. Yeah, so we may have like 1 million dead by Christmas, maybe more. It's going to be an exponential growth, and it's going to continue for 6 months. Yeah, it's not going to stop until like maybe May. You know, you may have like a kind of downward peak in May. But for the flu season, it's going to be very high throughout the whole flu season. So it's going to be horrific. Yeah, so that's what we're looking at right now. Yeah, it's a little bit sad because, well, it's really sad because we can see what's coming. Schools are open, people are getting infected, students are getting infected, teachers are getting infected, staff are getting infected. Some schools are shutting down, some schools are not shutting down. Once you have the infection spreading in the community, it's going to continue to spread even after you shut the school down. That's why I said shut the schools down from the beginning. You know, that's what happened with Virginia's 8th district public schools. They did not even open. That's the smartest way to keep the infection rate down. Once you open and you close it down, after the spread, it's already out there, right? Spreading, multiplying. So the whole strategy is to shut the schools down once there is a like an outbreak. That's a bad strategy because once there is an outbreak, you can't stop it. It's out there. Um, yeah, so it's going to be bad. But you may die from COVID-19. Your husband may die from COVID-19, but you should enjoy your bodies, each other's bodies. That's what husband and wife are supposed to do. They're supposed to enjoy having sex with each other, having procreation, enjoy each other's company, enjoy each other's bodies, have a lot of sex. That's what husband and wife are supposed to do. I mean, there are guidelines for that in Christian literature that Christian husband and wife should always have sex when the husband or wife wants sex. It's a sex on demand. That's what the Bible teaches. If your wife wants sex with you, you may not feel like it, but you gotta give her sex. If husband wants sex with you, you may not feel like you gotta give her sex. That's basically the Christian rule regarding sex in a marriage. God wants you to have a lot of sex if you're married. Sex keeps couples together. It's not always easy to have both couples wanting sex at the same time. That's why the New Testament has a rule that says if your husband demands sex, you got to give it to him. If your wife wants sex, you got to give her sex, because God knows in his infinite wisdom that it's not always that both of you want sex at the same time. But sex is necessary to keep the marriage going. That's why God has instituted this law in New Testament for Christians, or guideline. Yeah, obviously this show is for adults. For people, audience is targeting adults over 18. So I'm going to talk freely so that you understand what God expects of you, right? I'm not going to imply things, because then you're not going to get it, right? You need to hear exactly what God expects of you in terms of every aspect of your life, including your marriage and your sex life. You need to know what God wants from you, right? How else are you going to know what to do? Because there may be some women out there who don't have sex every time husband demands it from her because she doesn't feel like it and she thinks that it's okay. No, it's not okay according to the New Testament. If your husband wants sex, you have to pretend, fake it. You have to give him sex. Same with the husband. If your wife wants it, you may not feel like it. You have to give her sex. And so it's like God is compelling you to maintain a healthy sex life so that there's a physical dimension to your marriage that doesn't get cut off. If you see people getting divorced, they say, oh, I didn't have sex for a month and I wanted sex and, that's why I had sex with someone else. That wouldn't have happened if you had sex. Do you see what I'm saying? Majority of the adulteries committed by men can be avoided if the wife gives him sex on a regular basis, like once every day. It is like anything in life. You have to work at it to maintain it. In nursing we have a saying: if you don't use it, you'll lose it. Yeah, if you don't use it, you'll lose it. It's kind of like if you're always sleeping in the bed and you're not walking around, you're going to develop all kinds of joint problems because you're not walking around. You got to walk around or you're going to lose your joints. Yeah, I mean, you got to keep walking, using your hand to lift things. Don't, lift things that are too heavy if you're old. But, you got to move your joints, you got to move your arm, you move your leg, walk around. Do stretching exercises, obviously follow the instruction from your physician. But, if you use it, you're not going to lose it. That's the whole point, right? So nurses have that saying, if you don't use it, you're going to lose it. And so with sex, it's the same thing. Your husband and wife, if you have regular sex and you work at it to pleasure each other, you're going to have sexual life that's healthy, that's maintained. You're not going to lose it. But if you don't work at it and if you don't use it, you don't have sex regularly, you're going to lose it. And that's why you have idiotic couples who say, oh, I didn't have sex for 3 months. That's not healthy. That's not what God wants from your relationship. Your marriage is not just about prayer. Your marriage has to have sex. That's what God wants from you. Yeah, God wants you and if you're a man with your wife, woman who's your wife, to have sex regularly. This is part of being a Christian. Being a Christian is not just like, oh, I'm praying, I'm singing hymns. That's not. Why do you think there's guidelines for sex in the New Testament? Because Christian experience is holistic. It's not just about praying and worshiping. It's about husband and wife having sex regularly. That's a requirement in the New Testament. So if you're not having sex regularly as a husband and wife, you're not fulfilling your Christian duty that God expects of you. So yeah, I mean, obviously your pastor should have preached this. When I was going to Film on Christian Academy, Dr. Reed, my Bible study teacher, taught us this. This is a necessary part of biblical teaching. Yeah, so if your pastor did not teach you this at some point, especially in your marriage counseling or pre-marriage counseling, that he's not doing his job, right? Yeah, Bible has instructions for everything. So that's why Bible is important. We have well, 922 death, that was from yesterday. So it's a typo. But death went up from 206,888 to 207,776. So it's about the similar rate of death we're seeing. Let me just take out my calculator and calculate for you so you have the precise number. 207,771. That's the total number of deaths so far. Yesterday's number was 206,888. So the number of people who've died from yesterday to today is 883. 883. Yeah. So it's a little bit, it's a little bit lower than the 24-hour figures that we had yesterday, which was 922, but it's not that much lower, it's close to 1,000 deaths. In terms of cases, we're having more than 40,000 new cases per day. So we have 7,276,938 new cases. Now, I wanted to share some photos from my college, which is Jesus College, Cambridge. Hi, you guys. I love you guys. I really enjoy Jesus College. I had a great time, and Jesus College people, they're all undergraduates, but Jesus College graduates are great. My best friend Martin Wood and we went to their parties every week. They had a dance party every week on Friday nights, so we went to every single one. Unless we were another party. And it's like every college puts their own party on, and there's a sense of community. So in each college party, you have all the college members generally there, unless they're going off on a special event or something. So everybody becomes really close, and so in Jesus College, we had a group of really great undergraduates, and Martin Wood and I were graduate students, but we had a fun time, hanging out with them and socializing with them, so I got to know a lot of people really well. Yeah, that's wonderful. And you can see they're really pretty, there are a lot of pretty women at Jesus College. So I'm glad that I got selected for Jesus College. That was like my first choice. And I got my first choice. So Cambridge University has had many colleges, and some colleges are more prestigious than others. Jesus College is very prestigious. I like the name Jesus, because I love Jesus. So I applied, but I'm glad I did. Um, yeah. And during Halloween, people would dress up like, and you see that angel and demon there during Halloween party. Sometimes we have like garden parties, and right next to the angel is Lady Catherine. She's pretty. So she was doing a 6-year medical doctor degree. So in England, you go from high school to like a medical doctor degree, and it's like 6 years long. So you leave high school at like 18. By the time you're 24, you have an MD, medical doctor degree, and that's like that in Korea as well, and it's like that in most countries around the world. Germany, United States is probably one of the very few countries, maybe one of the like handful countries that where you go do a bachelor's first and an MD. But even in United States, there are programs that are like 6-year or 7-year or 8-year MD programs that you go directly in from a high school. But yeah, I like the European system better. Um, yeah, so I mean, they're really nice people, right? They're all from Jesus College. Every single one of them you see in front of you, they're all members of Jesus College. So yeah, I was there at Cambridge for many years, and I got to know all of them really, fairly well. Some of them really well, and so yeah, it was a lot of fun. A lot of nice people. Um, yeah, most of them were English undergraduates. Among the graduate students, you had like people who are from other countries. But undergraduates are mostly English. Although we had other, like some like yeah, most of them were English. But I mean there were a few foreigners, but mostly English undergraduates. Um, but I like English people. So oh, it's English or Scottish, Welsh or Northern Irish, like British. That's what I meant. But yeah. Um, Yeah, look at the cases of COVID-19 in the Middle East. You have Iran being number one. They have 461,044 cases. So Middle East has been very good about not having COVID-19 spiral out of control. Like in Latin America, it's spiraling out of control. So many people are dying. It's not even funny in Middle East. I mean, in Latin America. In Middle East, they've been able to keep it under wraps so far. That doesn't mean that's going to happen continuously, because Latin America used to have like these countries used to have less than 1,000 deaths. They suddenly start spiking suddenly, and now it's uncontrollable. Same with India. They were able to control it pretty well for a while, and then suddenly start spiking. It's spiked out of control. That could happen to any of these Middle East countries. So yeah, I mean, COVID-19 it's a baby virus. It just started in November 2019 in China. So it could go for like decades. You know, uh, I mean, COVID-19 can go for decades. It's like forever. Most likely because we see HIV virus going forever, we see hepatitis C virus going forever, we see herpes virus going forever. We have these viruses that are like forever. They don't have like vaccines or cures, some of them. So COVID-19 probably will be like that. Except the difference is COVID-19 will kill exponentially more people. And it can be transmitted through a respiratory process, like somebody could just breathe on you and you could get it. So many more are going to die. So that's the difference. But COVID-19 can be forever. Iraq is number 2, has 367,474 cases, 3% death rate. They have 9,231. So their death is rising too, which is a concern, obviously. Saudi Arabia, death rate is rising a little bit. They have 335,097 cases. Death is at 1%. And their total death is 4,794. Israel's death rate is rising slightly, but they shut down the whole country. first country in the world to shut down the whole country in this third peak, September to December, third global peak. And Israel is 253,490 cases and 1,622 deaths. Qatar is number 5, 125,959 cases. Death rate is like 0.2%, so it's smaller than Israel. So they have 214 people died so far. Obviously, Qatar is number 5. So you can imagine the rest of the Middle Eastern countries, they have negligible cases and negligible death. Like some countries have 0 deaths. Yeah, I mean, let's see if they could maintain it. But so far, they've done a pretty good job. England is not the only place with beautiful women. United States have some very, very, very attractive women. Yeah, especially in the Midwest. And the stereotype, like Midwest women being blonde and blue-eyed, like in Minnesota, you have like Scandinavians or Germans, in Ohio, blonde and blue-eyed. And I guess the picture of ideal beauty is like blonde hair and blue eyes. I know like majority of Asian men like blonde hair, blue-eyed women. I think that's why Dr. Sanjay Gupta married a blonde. I think she's blonde hair and blue-eyed, isn't she? I don't know if she dyes her hair blonde or not, but yeah, I mean, dye your hair blonde. If you look better as a blonde, dye your hair blonde. I encourage it. Yeah. But like eyes, I mean, you can't really change, right? It's what you got is what you're born with. I remember, Ed Mosing telling me, like, if your eyes are not blue, in the white culture, your white identity is kind of suspect. Now, I thought that was kind of an interesting thing that Ed said. Ed Mosang is my best friend from Film on Christian Academy, and I don't know, like I'm an immigrant from America, and he, as my best friend, told me a lot of things about white America that I found very interesting. Like the saying, he said, generally in white Anglo-Saxon Protestant culture, WASP culture, you need like blue eyes. If you don't have blue eyes, like if you have brown eyes, they think you're like mixed blood, like you have a mixture, racial mixture. You may not have racial mixture, but they kind of, you're like a second tier white person if you don't have blue eyes. I mean, he didn't put it like that in those terms. He just talked about, like people kind of expect people to have blue eyes. And obviously, Ed has blue eyes. He married a woman, Karen Nettleton, who was a teacher in Fairfax County Public Schools for many, many years. So a lot of people in Fairfax County Public Schools probably know Karen Nettleton. But she has blonde hair and blue eyes. Ed has blonde hair and blue eyes. So their children all have blonde hair and blue eyes. So they're maintaining the WASP identity. And because the traditional model of beauty in America is blonde hair and blue eyes, right? Like Shirley Temple. Obviously, some consider it very, very important. Like I remember when Ed was marrying Karen, he made a comment about that. He said, like, all of our children will have blonde hair and blue eyes. And for him, that was a positive thing. I think it's a positive thing too. But, even Black people, they want to marry a woman who's blonde hair and blue eyes, So you have like a lot of famous stars, wealthy Black people who marry girls who are blonde hair and blue eyes, because they consider that as the most beautiful in the woman, So these are Black people, and some of whom are in Black Lives Matter. I mean, they prefer blonde hair, blue-eyed women over like Black women, and they're part of Black Lives Matter movement. So figure that, you know what I'm saying? I mean, that's why, Black Lives Matter movement is a little bit fake on some levels, because, the wealthy Black men often marry, their concept of beauty Or let me say it like this: many wealthy black men, successful black men, do not want to marry black women. Yeah, I mean, I remember my female friends who are black talking about this. They said, like, when a black man makes it, he wants to marry like a white woman with blonde hair and blue eyes. Doesn't want to marry a black woman. And I'm like, there are so many beautiful black women. Um, you know, Obviously they don't believe in black is beautiful movement, because if they thought blackness was the most beautiful thing, they would marry a black woman, whether they're billionaires or not. Jay-Z married Beyonce, and they're both black. So there are blacks who are like kind of purist, they're not hypocrites in the Black Lives Matter movement, or Black is Beautiful movement. Because when you think about it, if you're saying like blackness is important, obviously you should marry like a black person if you're a black man. And whether you're poor or wealthy should not impact that, right? Like your sense of beauty, your sense of values should be shaped by the way you kind of judge what's beautiful and what's not. But obviously, because wealthy black men don't think black is beautiful, they marry they don't marry black women. And I mean, it has happened to a lot of wealthy black men, to the extent that like successful black men, like successful NF players, marrying like white women. That's more of a majority. It may even be said that it's a majority. Like for black men, a beautiful woman is blonde hair, blue eyes. Obviously, Toni Morrison wrote on this, and she wrote the book, the novel, The Bluest Eye. And she comments on this. Toni Morrison is a black woman. She won the Nobel Prize for Literature. As you know, I'm standing committee of global citizenship for National Council of English Teachers of English, NCTE. And that includes teachers who teach from pre-kindergarten to university professors, like at Loyola Marymount University or Marymount University in Arlington, or George Mason University in Fairfax County, or Georgetown University in DC, or George Washington University, American University, Howard University, or University of Maryland, right? These nearby universities, the people who teach English, they're kind of, that's their profession, right? Being an English professor or teacher. So, so I've examined, researched, published, and presented papers on Toni Morrison. So that's one of my expertise, Toni Morrison. I've read hundreds of secondary literature on Toni Morrison during my research on African American studies. And one of the things that people say is that The Bluest Eye is an autobiographical writing by Toni Morrison. It kind of reflects some of her experiences with blackness, black identity, black men who value like Shirley Temple or blonde-haired, blue-eyed women. So he says it's autobiographical and it reflects her sentiments. And some have even gone far enough to write that Toni Morrison, identifies with the really dark-skinned black protagonist, Pecola Breedlove, who is even shunned or ignored or downtrodden by black people for being too black. So other black children who are not as black skinned make fun of her, Pecola Breedlove in the novel, The Bluest Eye, for being black. And so Toni Morrison has talked about this in interviews, and academics have written about this. Why is it that a lot of black people consider lighter, fairer skinned black women as more attractive than really dark black skin black women? Because that's a value in the black community, according to these experts, that blackness is seen as a bad thing, even with the Black community. So when we're talking about Black Lives Matter, what does that mean? I think there has to be an intellectual debate about that among African American experts. What does it mean to say Black Lives Matter? And the concept of blackness within African American community, how does that relate to the concept of blackness? Because the concept of blackness in the African American community has been very negative, at least according to Toni Morrison, and novels like The Bluest Eye reflect that. Has that changed, or does it continue to be that way in the Black communities? What does it mean when we say Black Lives Matter? Is like Barack Obama, who's half white and half Black, is he considered Black, or is he not considered Black? I mean, where does these things, like, we need to have a more specific discussion on what blackness is. Is being Black, like anybody who claims to be Black is Black? There have been several professors who came out and said, I'm actually white, but I lied and I said I'm Black because I kind of like darker toned skin. And people believe that they were Black, and they said they got privileges from for claiming that they're Black. So even George Washington University had a professor who was Jewish, who proclaimed to be Black and got all these, promotions for Black professors and honors and prizes. And then she came out like a few months ago saying, I'm actually white. I lied the whole time about being Black just to get ahead professionally. And she called that like Black privilege. Or did she call that Black privilege? Or maybe it was one of the editorials. But, what does Black Lives Matter mean in the context of this reality? You have white professors claiming to be Black because they feel that claiming to be Black will help them advance in universities, like at George Washington University. So the question has to be asked, is that true? Is there such thing as a Black privilege? Like if you claim to be Black because you could pass yourself off as being a Black person, then does that give you like privilege? Is there Black privilege? I think that question has to be asked if we're going to be honest about it. So there are two dimensions, right? Is it ethical for a white professor who has kind of darker skin tone to claim to be Black? Because in the identity politics and identity studies literature, there's a trend in one strand that says you are whatever you claim to be. Like if you say you're X, that's what you are. So if we follow the logical line in that strain of ethnic studies, then a white professor who has darker skin tone, who could pass herself off as a Black person because of her skin tone, it could be argued from that strain of ethnic studies, if she could pass herself off as a Black person because her skin tone is darker, maybe she's, the professor at George Washington University is Jewish. I guess she's kind of Sephardic Jew, but she's like white. Sephardic Jews are not white technically, but she says she's actually white. She doesn't have any Black race in her. So, Arabic race, some Arab people look darker skin, but they're not Black. They're not from Africa. They're from Middle East. So I don't know. I guess she doesn't have any Black race in her, but she may have some Middle East, like Arabic race. I don't know what her racial composition is, but she said she is white. She doesn't have any Black blood, any Black DNA. I don't know. She says she's not Black in any sense of the term. She's Jewish and she's white. But because her skin tone is a little bit darker, you've seen people with darker skin tone, right? Italians sometimes have darker skin tone. It's not like they're darker skin tone because they're Black, blood, or they have an ancestor who's Black. And some may, but like if you go to like Sicily, skin color is kind of darker. And I don't think there's a history of Sicilians marrying Africans. I don't know, maybe there is. I haven't really studied Sicilian history, but I consider Italians as white people. But the concept is, if you can pass yourself off as a Black person among the Black people, then it stands to reason maybe you've suffered like a Black person for your skin tone, right? I mean, so a white professor who could pass off as a Black person could argue that because they could suffer for their skin tone, because people may mistake them for Black, like, fair-skinned Black people, like mulatto, like, you know, um, so they have the right to proclaim Black privilege. Since they suffer for not being really white, they may not have blue eyes and blonde hair. In the white world, they may argue, why can't I proclaim to be Black since I suffer for my darker skin? So at least I could get something out of it by latching on to Black privilege, right? I mean, why also a very educated white woman who becomes a professor of ethnic studies and African American studies at George Washington University do what she did? Because at a certain level, she's rationalizing in her mind that what she's doing is legitimate, right? I mean, she did this for like what, over 20 years. And nobody questioned her Blackness. No white professor, no Black professor, they all assume that she's Black. So what does it mean to be Black? Does it mean to be Black if you have origins from Africa? Or are you Black if your skin tone is kind of Blackish? Like if you're from India or Pakistan and your skin tone is kind of Blackish, so you could be mistaken for a Black person, then are you not Asian? Because Indians and Pakistanis are Asian. Are you actually, can you claim to be Black because of your skin tone? I mean, these are questions that have to be asked, right? What do we mean when we talk about Black Lives Matter? Are we excluding people with skin tone that's even darker, with some light-skinned Black African Americans in America? Like there are some Indians, like Asians from India, whose skin tone is far darker, blacker, than many African Americans in Arlington, Alexandria, Falls Church, and Fairfax County. So are these Indians from India Asians? They're Asians. I mean, do they not have right to claim to be Black? What do you think? I mean, these are questions I'm raising because I think as we talk about Blackness, Black Lives Matter, we need to start defining things. We can't just throw BLM, Black Lives Matter around without thinking about what it means. When we say Black Lives Matter, are we saying Black lives that are African American matter? Are we saying Black lives that are originating from Africa matter? Or are we saying Black lives, meaning skin tone that's Black? That could include like some people from the Middle East, Arabic people, some people from Pakistan or India, whose skin tone is like Blackish. What do we mean? Don't you think we need to define things? Because we're not first graders. We don't just throw out things without identifying what we're talking about, right? We need to explain it, identify it. We need to be specific. So what does it mean when we say Black Lives Matter? I mean, are we just going to stay ignorant and like just don't even know what we're talking about when we say Black Lives Matter? What do we mean when we say Black Lives Matter? We need to talk about this because at a certain point, everything becomes like confused. Do you want to live in a world of confusion or do you want to live in a world of clarity? What do we mean when we say Black Lives Matter? Are we saying that Black lives matter, meaning some people, they must have at least some Black ancestry somewhere from Africa? Is that what we mean? Like, Kamala Harris, it has like what, half Indian from India in Asia, half Black, but not, I don't think her father was Black from African America. I think he was Black from Caribbean, right? So Afro-Caribbean, I think is a technical term. So her father is from the Caribbean, but has ancestry in Africa. So she's not. Her father is not. Well, I mean, her father became an American citizen, so she could say he is African American. But when we talk about African American, we're talking about roots from Africa through the slavery, And Toni Morrison kind of focuses on that concept of African American identity. So when we say African American, are we going to stick to the traditional definition of African American, meaning Africans who came to America and became slaves, and then they were emancipated, and that is African American, that heritage, and that's what Toni Morrison kind of focuses on? Or are we saying, when we say African American, are we going to include people who've never experienced slavery in any of their ancestry through their mother's line and father's line? What do we mean? I mean, so these are questions that we do need to raise to understand, because we raise these kind of questions all the time in every ethnic studies, right? Jewish studies, we raise this kind of question in Korean studies, Asian studies. As you know, I'm an expert of Jewish identity and Jewish group identity, individual identity, and self-perception. So this is my field of expertise. So you can see that I'm an expert, right, by the way I talk. But we need to discuss this. And obviously, in certain strands of academia related to African American studies, some of these questions have already been raised. But the problem is, the media is not asking this question. And as you know, I don't believe in the liberal media. The liberal media is not very serious. They don't really dive deeply into anything seriously. So we don't really get answers to questions that we need answers to. And that's a shame about liberal media, because we need answers, right? We can't live in a confused society where nobody understands what's going on, right? That's just going to frustrate everybody, right? And communal angers will rise because people are just frustrated. We need to bring clarity. To bring clarity, we need discussion, right? And I'm an expert of identity politics. I'm an expert of identity, individual identity, group identity, individual perception, how others view you, how you view yourself. That's my field of expertise. I've been researching that for decades, mostly within Jewish studies, but I've done some research within Korean studies, Asian studies, and also African American studies. But I think that right now, with Black Lives Movement, George Floyd protests, we need to discuss these things academically. And I'm sure Cornel West at Princeton would agree with me. I knew him when he was at Harvard. And I'm sure Africanists who are experts in African American studies teaching in universities agree with me that we need to define the terms. We need to discuss it, because right now no one's discussing the technicalities of what it means to be Black, what it means to be African American. We're not discussing it. What does it mean Black Lives Matter? It's just like slapped on to the concrete without any kind of serious discussion. And that may be good at the activist level, when people are just kind of raging and protesting. But, any movement has to mature. You can't stay like 1 year old forever. You have to mature, and that has to bring in intellect, reason, logic, literature, and history. These things have to be brought in for a movement to be mature, to have a lasting power. Otherwise, it's going to fizzle out and it's going to disappear, right? And that's why you have these universities devoting themselves to like ethnic studies, Jewish studies, Korean studies, to create an intellectual infrastructure, but also to tie it to history and literature, right? There are a lot of things that start and fizzle out. So that may be the legacy of George Floyd protests. We don't know. George Floyd protests happened in May 2020. It was only 4-5 months ago. And by next time this year, you may not even remember who George Floyd is. That's the direction I think we're headed. How many of you think can talk about George Floyd now? and it's less than a year. I mean, people have very short attention spans. Um, yeah, I mean, you see what I'm saying? There has to be debate and discussions about serious topics, at the intellectual, academic, literature, history levels, and that's not being done right now. And it's a shame because, as I said, Black Lives Matter will just die out, without any kind of serious reflection on it. And it is headed that way in a way. But yeah, going back to blue eyes, the concept of beauty in Black communities may be the same as concept of beauty in white communities, meaning like blonde hair, blue eye, that's like the ideal beauty. As I said, just to recap, wealthy Black people, many wealthy Black people, football players, they end up marrying white women with blonde and blue eyes, right? I mean, there's a reason for that. That's their choice. Majority of the Asian males consider blonde hair, blue eyes as the most beautiful. So that is all over Asia. That is the perception. From what I understand, Italian men feel the same way, French men. And Arabic men too. You have a lot of Arabic people who marry blonde hair, blue-eyed women. So there's this concept of blonde hair, blue eyes as the most beautiful. And I thought it was like, well, white people are white, so they probably want something different. But it doesn't seem that way. When I went to Scandinavian countries and talked to guys about what kind of women they like blonde hair and blue-eyed women too. And they're blonde hair and blue eyes. Ed Mose, who's my best friend, he has blonde hair and blue eyes, but he wanted to marry a blonde hair, blue-eyed woman. So it seems like blonde hair, blue-eyed women, that's the international universal concept of beauty. So much so that Toni Morrison wrote about it, right? I mean, she wrote it critiquing, in her book, Lewis Died. Yeah, Dr. Pepper's really good. But, so she wrote it in a critical way, but her book, The Bluest Eye, reinforces her point, meaning the bluest eye is the concept of beauty, not only in the white world, but in the Black world. That's her underlying theme, right? Obviously, she discussed it in an intellectual way as a writer. And in a sense, she offered a critique of that social trend, social value system. But she, in a sense, without intending it, reinforced it. Because as you read her book, The Bluest Eye, even though she might have presented Pecula Breedlove as representative of herself as the protagonist, Pecula Breedlove is a tragic figure. You should read the book, The Bluest Eye, and you can see what I'm saying. So in a sense, those who are trying to positively reinforce the concept of beauty as being blonde and blue eyes, as well as those who are critiquing the value system in the world, the conclusion converges that women who are blonde hair and blue eyes are the most beautiful. They're the ideal of beauty. And as we know, like the Midwest has, because of Scandinavian origins and German origins, we have a lot of people who are blonde hair and blue eye, like for example, Lena Knorr, she's from Germany. She has like blue eyes and she has blonde hair. Sometimes she has brown hair. So I'm not sure if blonde hair is natural or not, but she looks really good as a blonde, far more than as a brunette. So if she's a natural brunette, she's smart to dye it blonde because she looks really good as a blonde. And she's German. She went to German school in New York, and she teaches at German school in Washington, D.C., Lena Knorr. So like she's German, and she's kind of stereotypically German looking, very pretty, blue eyes and blonde hair, And we have a Scandinavian. I don't know if Finland is technically Scandinavia. There's debate on that, and I've talked about it in the show, COVID-19 Update by Heerak. But Finland, we have a cohort member at clinical nurse leader, who's, Lena is also a fellow cohort member, who's from Finland, Niila Wittiko. And so her mom and dad are from Finland. So she's like child of immigrants. And she's blonde hair and blue eyes too, right? So because that's like Northern Germany. And, Ed Mosang, he has Romanian blood, German blood, Norwegian blood. There's a town called Mosang, and his last name is Mosang in Norway. And he's blonde hair, blue eyed. And most of the people at my school, Philmont Christian Academy, who are white, they had blue eyes. Some had brown hair and blonde hair. And Ed told me that it doesn't matter what your hair color is as long as your eyes are blue. And I'm like, wow, I guess white people care about these things. I don't know. I mean, I'm not white. I don't have relatives, cousins, or, uncles and aunts who are white. So I don't hear from an insider's perspective, about these things. But those of you who are white may be able to identify with Ed Mosang when he says like blue eyes matter in white society. Your white credentials. For your white credentials, become suspect if you don't have blue eyes. That's what Ed says, or it said, when we were in middle school. And so these things matter to many people. And Ed is like, the nicest guy in the world. And what I would argue is that perception is pervasive, majority way of looking at things. I remember at a cruise, Princess Cruises, that Ed and I took, we sat with an Irish Catholic family. He was a police officer in Chicago. And so, he's Irish Catholic. His wife is Irish Catholic, 100% Irish Catholics. And they lived in an Irish Catholic neighborhood in Chicago. And his wife is redheaded and with green eyes. And he had blue eyes, and, blondish hair. And a lot of Irish people are blonde and blue eyes or red and green eyes, right? And I remember him talking on and on about how his daughter was dating an Italian who's, and he's like brown hair and brown eyes. And he didn't like it. He didn't want her to date, an Italian guy with brown eyes and brown hair. I mean, he used a lot of, racist terms to refer to his daughter's boyfriend. But this is like normal world, right? In a sense, I mean, normal meaning that's how people in real life are. People say things because it's not like they're in the camera, right? Average normal people, they say what they think, and what are you gonna, you're not gonna correct them every time they say things that you don't agree with. In the real world doesn't work that way. It's not like when you're living as a president or a senator and you're under media scrutiny. So, like if something gets picked up on a camera or microphone, ooh, he said this, boo, But, it's this kind of thing that Americans say all the time, It's not seen as odd in a kind of, quote, normal, real situations, like family gatherings or whatever. People say these things all the time. And so, the reality does not match what goes on in liberal media. I don't believe in the liberal media. Liberal media is full of it. They're fake news. They live in a fake world, right? Real world is nothing like the value systems pushed by liberal media. People don't live in the liberal media world. They live in their own real world. In the real world, people live real lives, you know? And so what people keep forgetting is the Black Lives Matter protest, George Floyd protest, only a few million people participating, right? I mean, media doesn't point this out, but I will because I don't believe in the liberal media. What you saw in the liberal media, what you saw in the news, people protesting George Floyd and holding out signs, Black Lives Matter, blah, blah, blah. That's only a very small fragment of American population. I could guarantee you, majority of the Koreans in America, you know, were scared to death at the George Floyd protest. They condemned it. Majority of Koreans. The same with the majority of Chinese, majority of Filipinos, majority of Hispanics. You think like when people were burning down cars, you think Hispanic Americans were saying, wow, that's great. Let's, you know, no. Majority of the Hispanics condemned like burning down of police cars. Majority of Asians condemned it. Majority of white people condemned it. So the idea that the majority of America supports Black Lives Matter, that's just not accurate. Majority of the American people condemn Black Lives Matter as racist, like as representative Black racism. Like, you know, so you have, let me put it this way, in a way that you can understand. Majority of Asian Americans are not afraid of KKK because it doesn't bother them. Like KKK doesn't go around trying to kill Asians. But majority of Asians are afraid of like Black Lives Matter or George Floyd protests. The majority of Asians are afraid of that. And it may be part of the history because you have the LA riots in Los Angeles where Korean businesses were burned down by riots. And Koreans had nothing to do with it. It was between Black community and LAPD. But, you know, during the riots, they burned down all these Korean businesses. You know, so there is that kind of PTSD among Koreans. Many of them are still alive, right? Who lost everything in that the riots. Riots are not covered under insurance, you know. You know, and so most Asians, most Hispanics, they do not fear the KKK because, you know, they may run across KKK without knowing it, but it's not part of their experience. They don't see KKK members. They don't really see Aryan Nation members. They may meet people who belong to these organizations, but it doesn't impact them in any way, right? But they are afraid of like Black riots. That like mortally puts the fear of God into many Asians, you know? And so they're deathly afraid of like George Floyd protests and Black Lives protests, but they're not afraid of KKK or Aryan Nation. They don't feel the need to condemn it. So I would say that's like majority of Asian population. Not just the first generation, but even like young people. Majority of them, they're not really, that committed to condemning KKK or Aryan Nation. They're not committed to supporting Black Lives Matter. And I'm talking about high school students, college students. I would argue that many high school and college students condemn Black Lives Matter, or I'm talking about Asians, like Asians from India, Pakistan, Korea, Japan, China, Philippines, Indonesia. They would probably condemn Black Lives Matter and also, George Floyd protests. I don't think they support it, majority of them. And I think that's the case with Hispanic Americans, Latinos. We did not see any Latinos really support George Floyd or Black Lives Matter, because Black Lives Matter excludes the majority of Hispanics who are not Black. So, Hispanic Americans don't support the Black Lives Matter movement, most of them. Among the white people, there are some, liberal, like liberal media, liberal actresses and actors, Hollywood types or liberal singers who support Black Lives Matter. But majority of Americans, white people, I would say even like 90% of white people in both parties, Democratic Party and the Republican Party, I think they're deeply resentful of Black Lives Matter and George Floyd protests because they see it as a nuisance. They see it as an unnecessary interruption of their lives. And whether you're Democrat or Republican as a white person, you want white privilege. You want your children to benefit from white privilege. That's how parents are. That every parent wants their child to succeed and have all the benefits they can have. So even if you're white, Democrat, whether educated or uneducated, whether union member or a college professor, you don't want your child to lose white privilege because you want your child to be successful. So I would say 80% of white people in America, including all political parties and persuasion, education level, social level, economic level, they resent Black Lives Matter. They resent George Floyd protests. That's what I would argue. And I think I'm right. Let's see. I think on November 3rd, 2020 election, we'll see. But I think President Trump will win by a landslide because I think the biggest fear that white Americans have, whether they're black or, whether Democrat or Republican, is having an America where like Black Lives Matter dominates. I think white Democrats fear it far more than white Republicans. It's closer to home. Because like in the Democratic Party, you have the blacks, Hispanics, you have the whites, you have the Asians. And so for them, they don't want blacks to have leverage or too much power, right? So it's kind of like everybody wants power. Hispanics want power, Asians want power, whites want power, blacks want power in the Democratic Party. I think they fear, especially the voters, they fear on America, 4 years of America where black power becomes dominant. I think they fear that because they fear losing privileges or wealth. And I think the fact that COVID-19 is making a lot of people poor, a lot of Americans are losing jobs in both parties. I think that's kind of fueling this kind of movement against Black Lives Matter. So I think, we need to distinguish two things. There's what's going on in the media and what's going on in the real life, right? There are things that you may say to your wife you will never say outside of your wife. You may say some racist things to your wife, maybe seriously, maybe joking around, but you will never do that outside of like the intimate relationship that you have with your wife. And that's like, with like over 50% of the people do that. They say racist things to their wife, but they will never say it outside of their intimate relationship. You may be higher than 50%. I mean, you're watching this show, so you could honestly say to yourself, have I ever said racist thing about any race? When did I say it? Most of you would be like, yeah, I said some racist things, but I said it to my wife or my best friend, but I'll never say it to anyone else. And so the problem is this, right? That's the real world. We're not talking about the fake fictional world of media, right? They're trying to create this like Disneyland for liberals in the media, which is fake news. But that's not the real world. The real world is where people say racist things to their wife or their best friend and don't think twice about it. Right? And their wife or their best friends are not going to say anything. They may joke around and say, oh, you're such a racist. And then they'll both laugh about it and walk away. That's the real world. The fake media world is where like, oh, that matters. You see what I'm saying? The real world and the media world is different. Uh, in the real world, things don't matter. That matters in the fake media world. You see what I'm saying? And 80% of Americans are definitely afraid of black power rise in America. I would say 80% of white people in both parties. And I think that media doesn't understand that because media has not studied history. I'm a professional historian, as you know. And so I understand causes and effect in history. And I've taught history at UCLA, survey courses that cover like thousands of years. And so I know the broad stroke of history and I know the particular details of history, like especially in Jewish history. So I could say with 100% confidence, that media may be pushing to create a fake Disneyland for liberals in America, but when people leave that fake Disneyland, they enter the real world of racist America. I would say, I mean, I don't think too many Americans care about being racist, and they're not going to change. It doesn't bother them that they're racist. Some would celebrate it. I would say there are some people who are Hispanics, because there is literature written on how Hispanics are racist toward blacks in Latin American countries. Yeah. Um, and so to think that everybody cares about Black Lives Matter, I think that's a mistake on the part of Black communities if they believe that everybody believes that Black Lives Matter. I think Black Lives Matter. I care about Black people. I went to historically Black colleges and universities. I like Black people. I like learning from Black people. I like hanging out with Black people. I've dated some Black people. And, I like being around Black people. Just that's that's my personal thing. But I also like being around, different types of people too. I like being around white people. I like being around Arabic people. You know, you know. But I grew up in a Black neighborhood. In America, that's like my first neighborhood, Logan, Pennsylvania, Philadelphia. So I'm very comfortable in the neighborhood. That kind of setting. Some people are not, and I understand that because they may have never lived in a Black neighborhood, but to think that majority of Americans care about Black people, I think that's a mistaken view, and I don't think Black people are that. I know Black people are not stupid. Black people know that whatever is being said on the screen, that white people are still racist towards them. It's not. Black people are not dumb. They understand what's going on. Because suffering brings wisdom, and a lot of if Black people have suffered a lot, since the slavery days to now, they're going to suffer until kingdom come, because you can't never get rid of discrimination in society, right? So they understand that one part of them wants the utopia talked about by Dr. Martin Luther King in his sermon, The Dream, but the other part of them understands that could never be achieved. So I don't think majority of the Black people have any illusions that the fictional fake world of Dr. Martin Luther King's speech, I Have a Dream, will never be achieved. I don't think African Americans think that could ever be achieved because they're not stupid. Yeah, but there's a political game people play, and also there's wishful thinking, and that fuels you. There's many different social dimensions, right? And I'm a historian. I examine all of this from all different angles, right? But I think fake news, especially white journalists, I think they're kind of simple-minded. I don't think they understand reality because most white journalists haven't suffered. You know, they come from like white middle-class families, you know, and they went through high school in white suburban neighborhoods, most of these white journalists and CNN. And then they went to college and then they went to journalism school at Columbia or, you know, some school that costs like $80,000 a year and the parents pay for it kind of thing. And they joined the media. I mean, they're living in a little white bubble, you know, and they've gone from liberal education to liberal education. They've never suffered personally in their life. So they live in a fake world, you know, these journalists. In CNN, journalists and ABC, they have never suffered really, most of them, and they've never really lived outside of their little white bubble. So they think that they could actually create this I have a dream world because they don't have experience to understand what suffering is. You know what I'm saying? And I think Black people have suffered. So as people who have suffered, they understand that that reality can never be achieved. I don't think they have any illusions about that. African Americans who are educated as well as African Americans who are not educated. I don't think they have illusions about it. And that's why Black Caucus, you know, obviously there's political game they have to play and they play it pretty well. But I don't think they have illusions, you know, like the white progressive fake media does. They're living in a bubble. They're living in a surreal fake world. These white liberals, white progressives, and white journalists, they don't live in the real world. Um, and so, you know, that's why, you know, a lot of Black people are jumping ship to join President Trump. Because when they look at the white media, it's just too far out. You know what I mean? It's, you know, because people who are living in in the real world, they realize something that's fake. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, I don't know if you have heard the term street smart. Because you've suffered so much and you lived in the street, so to speak, you know? It's hard to fool someone who's lived in the street distrusting everybody. Right? So when you have these white middle class journalists who went through suburban high schools, went to like Ivy League universities, and then went to like Columbia Journalism School for masters or Northwestern for journalism, and they go on to become journalists and they sprout all these like white progressive viewpoints. Many Black people are going to be like, huh? You know, they get confused by it too because they're like, not confused like they don't understand, like they confused like this is not going to happen. And I think that's why a lot of Black people are leaving the Democratic Party because, you know, like when some people go really far out, you just leave. Right? You can't identify with it, you can't understand it, and you know it's only going to spell trouble, so you just leave. So that's what's happening right now in America. A lot of Black people are leaving the Democratic Party. A lot of Hispanic people are leaving the Democratic Party. A lot of Asian people are leaving the Democratic Party because they're too far out. They're like way outside of real reality zone. And they don't live in the real world. And so a lot of white people are leaving the Democratic Party as well because they can't relate to something that's fictional, right? Um, so, you know, I mean, I predict the landslide victory for President Trump. I think he'll win by like 20% margin because people cannot identify with the liberalism of the Democratic Party. They just cannot identify with it. The way that the Democratic Party is embracing like defund police. I mean, how many white Democrats do you know who will go along with that? I mean, let's be honest here. White Democrats are scared out of their wits when they saw their police cars being burned. They don't care what the reason is. And that's what Democratic Party leadership doesn't understand. Normal people don't want burning of cars. You know, they definitely do not want burning of police cars. You know, white Democrats, trust police officers to protect them. You know, white Democrats, even white working class Democrats, don't mistrust the police like African Americans do. The experience is completely different. And white Democrats cannot relate. They can't understand how Black Americans view the police. They can't understand that because they have their way of looking at the world, right? We're talking about two different perspectives. They're not going to meet. So when Democrats support like defunding police, you're going to lose a lot of white Democrats. They're not going to vote for you because they're afraid of defunding police. That issue alone is going to get a lot of white Democrats to vote against the Democratic Party at local, state, and federal levels. So you're going to have landslide victory for Republicans in the Senate, as long as you can keep the fear alive, right? It's about fear, right? Fear is a motivator. You keep stoking the fear that Democrats will get rid of the police. I mean, you know, the fear will drive you to vote against your own party, right? Fear is a motivator. I mean, you know, Republicans are not very good about stoking the fear. Although Donald Trump is pretty good. You know, he has all these tweets stoking the fear of white Americans in both parties to be deathly afraid of like defunding police. So he's very good about that. That fuels the fear. And, you know, if you get enough white people to be afraid of defunding police, there's no way Joe Biden's going to win. I mean, you saw the debate. President Trump said, how many police officers like support you? You know how many white Democrats he's won over by that conversation alone with Joe Biden? I mean, I cannot envision Joe Biden winning in any scenario as long as President Trump keeps stoking the fear of losing the police. That alone will get all the Asians to vote for him. A majority of Asians will vote for President Trump. They don't want to lose the police. That issue alone will get like majority of Asian votes for President Trump. As long as you keep hammering away at the point, you know, that issue alone, because to be honest with you, Asian Americans cannot identify with the mistreatment by police that Black Americans can identify with. But that illustrates the point, doesn't it? Black people are right. Black people get mistreated by the police. But that also highlights on another point that the fake media is not pointing out, that Heerak Christian Kim, who's a historian, will point out for you. I treat you like people who are in my classroom, because sometimes you don't understand what's going on in history, and I, Heerak the historian, will show you. You know, that's what I do in my history classrooms. When I was teaching at UCLA, this is what I did to my students. These are rank 1 students. I have African American students, Hispanic students, white students, Asian students, Arabic students, Persian students are like rank 1 in their high schools. They have a certain way of looking at things and I have to point out things that they're not seeing. It's like Johari does it. Like they have their own experiences and thoughts and biases that hide certain areas, Johari Square. So they can't see it. So as a historian and an amazing teacher, professor, I point out like what they're missing. And that's what I'm doing with you. There are things that you are missing that you need to consider. And that is, yes, Black Americans are absolutely right to say they are mistreated by white police officers. And that's the whole point of Toni Morrison's book, The Bluest Eye, is that Black people get mistreated because they're Black. You should read the book. But the second point is being missed here. You know what the second point is? Black people mistreat Black people because they're Black. Yes, you heard me right. The second theme, and maybe that's actually the primary theme of The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison, the novel by the Nobel Prize winning author, is that Black people mistreat Black people because of Blackness. Meaning Black people who are Blacker gets mistreated worse by black people because they are blacker. Yes, that is the central theme of the bluest eye. What does that mean? So let's unpack this in 2020 America, heading into November elections. You think that pointing out that police officers mistreat black people will help you? You're thinking with your emotion. When you point out police officers mistreat black people, you're actually making the situation worse. Let's unpack this a little bit further. Let's say you're in high school, and all of you probably have been in high school. This is mandatory in America. Some of you might have dropped out, but majority of you haven't been to high school. Let's say somebody picks on you in your high school. And you say, I'm being picked on. What happens to you? People who did not pick on you before will start picking on you. So even though you're being picked on, you have to pretend like you're not being picked on. If you've been to an American public school, you know what I'm saying. I mean, I didn't go to American public school, but enough of my students went to American public schools. And some of that even goes on in American Christian schools. So the smartest thing is to stay clear of bullies, right? Because the moment you're bullied, it's like a self-perpetuating, self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Because if one person starts bullying you, another person will start bullying you, and that whole school can start bullying you, right? Now, if you act like, oh, I'm being bullied, more people go out of their way to bully you. Anybody who's been to high school understands this fact. So the point is this. In America, when you come out and say, we're being bullied by white police officers, it's a fact. I mean, not all police officers, but some police officers. Like when you get bullied in high school, not everybody bullies you. There are these like one or two bullies who bully you. But if you say, oh, I'm being bullied, then people who are not bullies will bully you too. You know how it is in high school. You've been to high school, so you know what I'm saying. I'm talking about American high school. Well, not everybody went to American high school because this show is international. So there are people watching this show from England, Korea. So, it's not the same in other countries, but in America, it's certainly that way. And other countries may have similarities. So when you go through high school, one of the things that you try to hide is the fact that you're being bullied when you are being bullied, right, in order to survive high school. So you need to understand that is a human nature that is not just particular to high school, but pervasive throughout society in America. What that means is, yes, it sounds good when you come out and say, I'm being bullied by white police, I'm Black. And some people seem to be commiserating with that. And it seems like there's a glimmer of hope things will change. But do you remember Austin Powers, the movie? Austin Powers, the movie, where Dr. Evil Mini-Me pretends like he's a friend of Austin Powers. And Mini-Me is bullying Austin Powers, right? So Austin Powers, this might have been the second one. Austin Powers like, oh, so you want to be friend? You want to be friend? And Mini-Me's like, yeah, I want to be friend. And so he pretends like he's a friend. So Austin Powers like believes that he's a friend now. And then a little later, Mini-Me starts like, kicking him and stuff like that. And that's what happens. It seems like white America is coddling or commiserating or having empathy for Black suffering, but they're not. I'm a historian, so I could say with absolute confidence, um, societies don't change for the better in these regards. They don't. Um, if you think that societies can change for the better, that is not very historical because we don't have a simple example of that anywhere in any civilization, in any continent, among any race, where things get better. Things always get worse. Do you think things gotten better since 1960 civil rights movement? That proves my point. Because in every historical examination of every location in the world, there is not a single example of things getting better in these kind of human relationships at the communal levels. There is not a single example of long-term benefit. There isn't an example. Find me an example, email me and let me know. So if you think that like many white people pretending to care, you actually believe that they care. You're being like Austin Powers believing in mini-me. They don't care. Some may care for like, some may genuinely care for a fraction of a second, but in the long scheme of things, they don't care. And that's humanity, right? Humanity. This is the human experience. It's part of being human. Just think about you and your girlfriend. You tell her your secret about your childhood where you're bullied. She uses it against you in your argument. You see what I'm saying? You shouldn't have told her that, and that she would not have used it in an argument. It always happens, like 10 out of 10 times. Because when she gets angry, she's going to use it against you. She can't help it. She's a human being. Being a human being means that in your anger, you use things that give pain to the person who trusts you. That's what being a human being means. It happens in every relationship. Nobody can protect themselves from it because that's what being human being means. In a fight, it comes out. That's why they say silence is golden. It's better not to tell hurtful things from the background because eventually that's going to be used against you. Smart thing to do is hide the painful moments in your life from your girlfriend or your wife. That way, it's never going to be used against you in a fight. I mean, you're talking about like 40 years of marriage. You tell her stuff, she's going to use it against you, and it's going to be painful. Right? So it's better not to tell her the painful experiences you had. It's never going to be used against you. Yeah, just lock away and throw away the key. Lock away in one of your compartments, throw away the key. It's better for you, better for her. Right? Because she's going to regret using it against you. And then she's going to resent you for telling her that. So she's going to blame you for her using it against you during a fight. Do you see how that works? That's why the added silence is golden works. Because you tell her your painful moments from the past, because you quote trust her, and she commiserates with you, feels good for a while. You have a fight, she's going to use it against you, and you're in more pain than the first time you actually experienced the pain, because it's coming from your wife or your girlfriend whom you love. And then she's going to say, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to use it against you. And then you're going to resent it because she used it against you, and it may become another fight. When she apologizes, it may start another fight. I mean, come on, you've experienced this because you're in so much pain. And then she's going to say, why did you tell me in the first place? Right? She's going to resent you. So just because you shared one secret about your painful episode in life, that will cause at least 10, 20 episodes of pain in your life that may end up getting in getting you and your wife to break up and get a divorce. These things happen. Because pain becomes more painful. When someone you care about use it against you, but that's what human beings do. That's why it's better not to tell your wife anything that you experienced that's painful from the past, because she will use it against you during a fight. It's like 99.9% guaranteed she will use it against you in 50 years of your marriage. And it may end up breaking up your marriage. Yeah, it's better not to tell the vulnerable moments in your life, because human beings cannot handle that kind of information. It's better not to say anything. Just leave it in the past. Now that's why we call it baggage, right? The moment you start talking about it, it's a baggage. If you don't talk about it, it's not a baggage because you left it behind. Yeah. So leave the baggage behind, right? If you want a successful relationship, don't be hashing your painful moments. Well, 25 of us, including clinical nurse leader, we suffer a lot of pain, going through clinical nurse leader program, but it's not really pain in the personal sense. It's like an objective pain, study pain. It's a very difficult program, but we learned a lot, and so, but some people, will not recover. Yeah. I mean, I shouldn't laugh about it, but that's what we do. When people suffer, we laugh about it. And Germans have a saying called Schadenfreude. All your friends are trying to keep a straight face when you talk about how you suffer, because it's funny to people who didn't suffer, right? I mean, you've experienced it. You tell your friends about your suffering, and they start laughing out, like they can't stop themselves. That's how people are. Yeah. But anyway, yeah. But it's like Georgetown University's clinical nurse leader program is a very good program. I mean, it costs $200,000, but I would say it's worth it. Because it's a good program. Georgetown University is a famous university, as you know. So it's like when you date a woman like that, University of Wisconsin woman, hey, you're willing to take stuff a little bit more than when you date an ugly woman. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, all guys know what I'm saying. Yeah, I mean, if a woman is very pretty like that, most guys will put up with like a lot, just because you're beautiful. Yeah, that's just the way guys are. They're willing to take it, to have you as your wife or your girlfriend. Yeah, that's just guys are that way. Prettier you are, more leeway you're gonna get. That's part of life. Um, you know, um, Obviously being thin is half the battle. Like any woman, like her, if she gained 20 pounds, she'd be ugly. Yeah, yeah. Being thin is very, very important. So eat small meals 3 times a day. If you're hungry, just eat like bananas. Yeah, make sure you keep your figure. Because beauty is power. Beauty is power. There's no doubt about it. If you're beautiful, you can get away with anything. Yeah, like if you're beautiful, blonde and blue-eyed, like that, you can get away with anything, almost anything. That's just the way the world is. And the bluest eye actually kind of reflects on that. Yeah. Yeah, women who look like that, life becomes easier, in many ways. And you could say that's unfair, but if a woman is that pretty, she also has sufferings that you will not have because of her beauty. So it balances out, and then God's fair, everything balances out, you know. So because think about it, let's say she gets married, she's that beautiful. There'll be like guys trying to cheat, hit on her, even though she's married. If she were ugly, there'll still be guys hitting on her because guys are like that. But um, there'll be less guys hitting on her, right? So there'll be less chance of her like committing adultery, right? Um, because it's hard to like ward off all the temptation all the time. So when you're pretty, people are going to come at you, trying to have sex with you. That's just the way guys are, right? So that is you could say that's suffering because sometimes you can't control emotions. Sometimes you may commit adultery that you don't plan on committing adultery, right? Because maybe you put your guard down, maybe you were drunk or whatever the situation is. And then that's going to create a whole slew of problems. So, it all balances out in the end. If you're an ugly girl married to a guy, nobody's going to hit on you, or very few guys are going to hit on you. And you're going to be able to ward them off. So you'll probably have a successful marriage the rest of your life. I mean, there are a lot of beautiful women who have successful marriages the rest of their lives. So, but, it's harder to do. So, everything balances out on that. But going back to African Americans, if you think that people really care about your suffering, I don't think most African Americans are that naive, because of suffering makes you wise. So I think a lot of African Americans are playing the political chip, which is a politically smart thing to do. But I don't think there are too many Africans who fool themselves into thinking there would be a raceless society where everybody is gonna be like non-racist. I don't think you'll find any African who believes that. I mean, if you believe that you could create a raceless society, you're probably an idiot. Uh, so yeah. But anyway, hopefully you're not an idiot. But since I talked about my clinical nurse leader core members, there's 25 of us, and we went through a very difficult program. And if we weren't Georgetown, I'm sure a lot of them would have left. We had like 9 people leave our cohort, right? Out of 34, like 9 or 10 people left the cohort. Some of them just left the program for good because some of them thought it wasn't worth it, all the suffering, because not all the programs are equally hard. Do you know what I'm saying? Georgetown's program is especially hard. But some people, were willing to go through that because it's Georgetown, But there, some people like even that's not worth it, So because you could go to another nursing school with the same exact program, clinical nurse leader, master's degree, same exact master's degree, and the program will be like 10 times easier. It could be 100 times easier. So some people are like, hey, I'd rather go to a school which is 10 times or 100 times easier for the same exact degree, and not have Georgetown name, than go to a school like Georgetown, which is incredibly hard, and suffer through 2 years. There are people like that. You know what I'm saying? It's there's always a trade-off, right? Now, I prefer to date a girl like that who looks like that, like University of Wisconsin cheerleader in the center, because beauty is important to me, including all the suffering, right? But there are guys who are like, yeah, I just rather not date a woman who's beautiful. I'd rather date a woman who's not beautiful. I mean, there are different types of people, because if you date a woman that's that beautiful, you know, there are far more responsibilities, you know, and you know, I guess that's the safe word to use, you know. There are a lot of stuff you have to do. It's much harder, you know. Um, there's just more work, not just with her, but like, you know, but you know, I think it's worth it, you know. And just like I thought it was worth to go to Georgetown, and I stuck it out for 2 years, incurred $200,000 debt. Because you know, I want a Georgetown name to be part of me. I have high respect for Georgetown University. It's the best Catholic university in America. And I value Vatican position on abortion and gay marriage. So there was no question about me sticking it out. You know, there was a value attached to it that was important to me. Like Georgetown being the best Catholic university in America, maybe even in the world. So for me, you know, that was, you know, it's like the Harvard of Catholic universities in the world. So, you know, for me, that was an important value. I wanted to be part of that tradition, Jesuit tradition, you know. Um, so, you know, I did what I can, lost the sleep that I had to lose to do what I needed to do. Um, so for me, like Georgetown is like dating, it's equivalent to dating a girl who looks like that, you know, and I was willing to put up with everything. Um, you know, but I wouldn't put up with that. Like if I were at another university, like, you know, let's say I was in a clinical nurse leader master's program, you know, somewhere else that was, you know, I would not have put up with like all the suffering that all of us 25 clinical nurse leader members had to put up with. You know what I'm saying? CNL 2020, Georgetown University, yay! We graduated on August 24th, 2020, yay, we did it, we did it, we did it. If we die from COVID-19 before Christmas, at least we could write on the gravestone that we graduated from Georgetown University on August 24th, 2020, yay! Well, I could write down RN MS, CNL. You know, hopefully you'll pass, you know, your NCLEX, you know, I'm talking to my CNL 2020 core members. I hope, you know, you'll pass your NCLEX RN exam so you could put RN after your name. You know, one of the conditions for being able to put CNL name behind your name, you have to pass the RN. So even if you pass CNL, National Certification Exam, if you don't pass RN, you can't put CNL after your name. But you know, I passed my RN. I have my 2 RN license from Washington, D.C., another one from Virginia. Virginia's RN license is multi-state, like 30 different states. I could practice as an RN. So I have my RN after my name. I have MS with Master of Science and Clinical Nurse Leader. And I could also put CNL after my name. I have like 3 titles right now. How many people could say that? You know what I'm saying? Most people, when they get out, they don't have that many titles, you know. So I already have like 3 titles to start out, you know. Yeah, and hopefully I'll add far more after that, you know. Yeah. But, you know, that's what I'm saying, you know, like, you know, you got to do cost benefit analysis, right? You know, the cost is like, oh my gosh, clinical nurse leader program at Georgetown, that's like, oh man, there's so much suffering. But Georgetown University is like that woman in the center of the photo. You know what I'm saying? Do you want to dump her because of all the suffering and trouble? Uh, some guys will say yes. Let's just dump her, you know. And some guys walk away from that, you know. That's why, you know, some guys leave beautiful women like that. But you know, some guys don't. And so, yeah, you know, it's like you gotta know your own value. You know, like if you're an ugly girl and you overstep your demands, I mean, you know, you have to weigh like what can I get from this person with what I have, right? You gotta like weigh the cost benefit analysis. in any relationship, like until you get a ring, get married, you could lose any guy, right? Like in a relationship, if you're a girl. So you gotta kind of weigh like, what do I need? What do I have to do to keep this guy, right? What is my worth? How much can I push? You gotta consider all that because like, a lot of guys will just walk away if they feel like the cost is higher than the benefit. That's just the way people are. And, I guess that's probably the way with women as well, right? They do cost benefit analysis and they'll walk away if they don't feel like the cost is worth the benefit. But that's how the world runs, right? So you have to always ask yourself, what am I willing to lose? What do I not want to lose? These are things that you got to ask yourself, and you got to determine your actions in a deliberate way, right? And that's purposeful living. Unfortunately, over 90% of the people don't live purposely. They just kind of drift through life, and they make decisions on the fly without really too much thinking. And that's why there are so many problems in the world, right? Because people do things without thinking. But yeah, it's always good to cost benefit analysis. And so, going back to Black Lives Matter, I think it's smart for Black people to milk it for all it is, to get benefits personally and as a community. I encourage it. Because as I said, life is about competition. Whatever you can leverage to get what you want, what you need, you should. And I think, I applaud Black people in America for leveraging Black Lives Matter to get what they want or need on a personal level or community level. I think that's a great thing. Some people play the game better than others. Black people have played this game pretty good. At least, so far, but who knows? I maybe not play it as well in the future, but, you know, um, but I think, you cannot have illusions. People are people. You have to understand human nature. And Bible talks about human nature. Let's not forget what the Bible talks about. Bible talks about everybody being sinners, everybody having original sin. And so Bible does emphasize the corruptible nature of human nature. And so that's something you cannot forget. Obviously, you want to give people benefit of the doubt, but you also have to remember that there is sin in the world and people are sinners. And so you should be shocked when people act in certain ways that disappoint you, it's like you're going to be mentally healthy if you just kind of take the Bible at its face value, treat people and understand people the way the Bible explains it. You're just going to be mentally healthier, If you think like all people are good, you're like setting yourself up for failure because people will disappoint you. History is a proof of that. Bible actually emphasizes that. But if you approach people, with respect, but also with reality, that human beings are fallible, they can disappoint you, then, you're going to be mentally healthier because you're not going to be shocked at the way people behave. If you understand that human nature is corruptible, human beings are sinful, then nothing can really shock you, really, because people are capable of that because of the sin. But when you are start trusting people like they're sinless, then of course you're setting yourself up for failure in relationships. You're setting yourself up for failure in love. You're setting yourself up for failure in life, And, a lot of people who, get shocked in life, that becomes, a problem for them personally or mentally, is that they kind of set themselves up for that, They think like the whole world is good or, everybody is decent, and obviously you're going to set yourself up for failure because even decent people do all kinds of horrible things, Um, history is proof of that. Yeah. So, yeah, you cannot trust human beings. I trust only Jesus. Jesus is the only one who's not going to disappoint me. I, I, I mean, I don't expect everybody to disappoint me, but I won't be surprised if people disappoint me, whoever that is, because that's just the way human beings are. Human beings are not gods. Human beings are not sinless. Human beings make mistakes. And that's why we say to err is human, right? Yeah, we have two articles here that's going to help you. There is a disturbing trend that's developing in America. Hopefully not too many of these beautiful women will die. They're like pieces of art, these women. Obviously, I can only marry one. I would love to marry a woman who looks like that and have a lot of sex with her every day. You know, I mean, you know, within the confines of marriage, you should have a lot of sex. But yeah, so I'm obviously you should have a lot of sex with your wife too. I've never been married. I don't have children. You know, yeah, I'm praying to God to send me a beautiful woman like that. So let's see, hopefully God will answer my prayer. God does what he wants. What can you say? Would it be nice if God did everything you wanted him to do? But he's not a genie. You can't just like rub, 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 and then genie comes on and you tell the genie what to do and you get what you want. God's not your slave. If God does what he wants, just hoping God will give me what I'm asking for. Yeah. So there are two articles I'm reading. One is Wisconsin records highest single day number of new COVID-19 cases. The state is emerging as a new hotspot in the U.S. It's tragic what's happening in Wisconsin. It looks like a lot of people in Wisconsin will die. I hope beautiful women don't like that don't die. They're like pieces of art. It's like burning up Monet's, water lily series, Now, the quote is, coronavirus outbreaks are erupting in dozens of states across the U.S., with Wisconsin leading the pack as the newest Midwest hotspot. So there are a lot of hotspots in the Midwest right now. On Thursday, the state recorded 2,000, that's today, Thursday, 2,887 newly confirmed COVID-19 cases, the highest the state has seen since the onset of the pandemic. COVID-19 is everywhere, everybody. Yeah, you're gonna die, unfortunately, if you're not careful. That's why I'm saying there's going to be 3 million Americans who die in this flu season minimum, but probably more like 20 million. Because I'm looking with a microscope, right? Like, magnifying glass at the reality right now, it's like, yeah, I don't want you to die. I wish no one would die, but the reality is, this is, we need, when we look at things with a magnifying glass, there's clarity. A lot of people are going to die. It's unfortunate. So I have some photos of you, of people from Wisconsin there. Green Bay, Wisconsin. In the middle, you have St. Norbert's College, where my buddy, Professor Michael Luvano, the chair of history department, ancient history, classics, teaches. Yeah, and so you have like University of Wisconsin people on the left side. On the right side, you have pictures of Illinois, cheerleaders from University of Illinois, Southern Illinois University, Illinois State. So the second article is Illinois health officials report 2,166 new coronavirus cases, 25 deaths. So, that's going to obviously increase in flu season. But yeah, Midwest is in trouble. So both of the articles are from today, and the significant quote there is, as experts fear a second wave of infections in the US, Midwestern states are seeing some of the nation's highest per capita rates of infection. Some hospitals in Wisconsin and North Dakota, and Ed's relatives, they live in North Dakota, so worry about them, are running low on space, and the Tennessee Titans postponed the game due to an outbreak. It's bad, people, everybody. You know, I wish I could say, give me 5, coronavirus is dead, give me 5. But I can't do that. Coronavirus is very much alive. It's infecting a lot of people, and it's killing like 1,000 people per day in America. It's a darn shame. But it's going to be worse in the flu season, 6 months of flu season. Minimum 3 million Americans are going to die. That's my prediction. And I think I have sound evidence and proof to support that. It's sad. So when Christmas comes around, Moose is waiting for Christmas. Moose is waiting for Christmas. But when Christmas comes around, yeah, it's going to be bad. You know, I'm predicting that like 10,000 nurses will die by Christmas. 12 nurses will die, minimum 12 nurses will die in every hospital in this area. My hospital, Virginia Hospital Center, Inova Fairfax, Inova Alexandria, MedStar Georgetown University Hospital, George Washington University Hospital, Children's National Hospital, Sibley Hospital. Each of these hospitals will have minimum 12 die by Christmas. That's my prediction. And there are several reasons for that. I mean, COVID-19 has mutated. Now it can infect beautiful women like that in their 20s and kill them. It can kill them through respiratory problems. It can also kill them through a stroke in the brain. Yes. It can also cause inflammation of other organs. It could also clot your blood in other parts of your body. Yeah, there's several ways young people in their 20s can die. A lot of nurses in their 20s are going to get infected, and some of them are going to die. It's a shame. That's something that we're looking at. Yeah, it's going to happen, unfortunately. Yeah, I mean, that's why I want to do a cheer for my, CNL core members again, 25 of us. I'm predicting that minimum 5 will die, 5 to 10, especially those who work in ICU, intensive care units. They have high chance of dying. That's why I chose not to work in an intensive care unit. Because I don't want to die in the flu season. I knew people are going to die. I predicted this since June. The people are going to die. Massive number of people are going to die in the flu season. I mean, if I thought no one's going to die from COVID, I would have gone to the ICU. Yeah, but ICU is the most dangerous place in the hospital, probably the most dangerous place in the world right now. Yeah, that's like an incubator for death. Yeah, I mean, people survive. There are people who went to D-Day as a bullets flew who survived. But people died. I mean, you had 1 in 4 chance of dying in D-Day if you're a U.S. Marine. You know what I'm saying? ICU is kind of like that, in COVID-19 flu season. So I'm going to especially, I feel bad for everyone who's working in the ICU who are in my cohort. I mean, they're all happy they're working there, but little do they know, they may be the first to die, I mean, from COVID. Hopefully not, because, I love you guys. I don't want you guys to die. But, yeah. CNL 2020, Georgetown University, yay, CNL, yay. But if you can retire, I would take the retirement, before the flu season comes. Because wouldn't it be horrific if you're like 1 year from retirement and you die? Or if you could retire and you didn't retire and you die? I mean, that would be like tragic. Or if you have if you're a single mother nurse and you have 2 children and you die, leaving them orphans, that's like so tragic. I mean, I think that nurses with pre-existing conditions who have something to lose, I'm not married, so if I die, there's no orphans. I mean, I want to get married, don't get me wrong, and I'm not going to let COVID-19 stop me. If I find a girl like that and she loves me and I love her, she's a Christian, I'm going to get married, obviously, and if she's not a divorcee. yeah, but yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna let COVID-19 stop, and then if you get married, I hope to have children, Um, but right now I'm not married. I don't have children. Never had children. So if I die, it's just me. I die, so I don't worry, at all. I mean, I'm not saying I'm dying. I'm hopefully I'm not going to die from COVID-19, but I mean, there's always a chance I'm overweight. So, I could die if I get COVID. I mean, it's a possibility. But, I'm saying like there's really nothing that I will lose. So there's no reason for me not to work as a nurse. I don't have to worry about like children or, anything like that. But if you're like a single mother with 2 children, you may want to take a leave of absence for the next 6 months and come back like in May, you know? Um, yeah, I mean, I would seriously consider if I were a single mother and if I had enough saved up in my bank account, um, I would consider it if I were a single mother with money saved up. Because, I mean, I don't think it's worth risking your life and dying, leaving your 2 children homeless. Like if you're married to a guy and you have 2 children, obviously, if you die, it's your husband can still raise your children. So you can take the risk. But as I said, cost benefit analysis, because there's a high risk for death in 6 months of flu season. And if you're working at like emergency room or ICU, your chance of dying is very high. And you may not die. I'm sure a lot of ICU nurses will not die. A lot of emergency room nurses won't die. It's like the D-Day, About 25% of the Marines died, I think. That's the figure that I've heard. But 75% did not die. So it's not like everybody dies. Like if 30 million Americans die, you still have 300 million Americans who didn't die. So yeah, it's a large number, but a lot of people didn't die. So as a nation, um, we can survive with 300 million as long as it's not like in central areas like New York City, Washington D.C., Chicago. Like, if 30 million people die and they're like all concentrated in cities, then country may not survive. But or it would take long to like get back to where we were. But country could collapse. But like on a personal level, you need to make the decision, right? You need to make the decision, right? Because you could die. Like if you're working in the emergency room, if you're working in the ICU, if you're single, then there's nothing you need to worry about. If you die, you just die. You're not leaving behind little kids, right? You don't have to worry. So I'd say just keep working because, someone has to treat the patients. You're not married, you're single. So if you die, yeah, it's horrible, but at least, you're not leaving behind orphans. So I say keep working. But if you are like a single mother, I would say you need to consider seriously what's the most important to you. Like you may not have enough money saved up, so you may have no choice. You have to work to survive, to feed your children. Then you have to work. You have to risk death. You may die, you may not. But if you don't work, you're not going to have food. You're not going to be able to pay rent. You have to work. You have no choice. Um, but yeah, because like if you're paying mortgage now on a townhouse in Arlington, you're probably paying about $3,000 a month or more. I don't know how much you'd be paying, but if you took out like because townhouses in this area are like what $800,000. So if you're probably paying what 3,000-4,000 every month. So yeah, so that's not easy to pay. So if if you are paying, then you'd have had to save what 2, 3, 4 million to like stop working, or at least 1 million. Since 6 months could quickly pass by, but yeah, but you have to do a cost benefit analysis. And if you are overweight, and you're married, you may even have a husband, but still you have a chance of dying. I mean, it's iffy because if you die, your husband could take care of your children. And we do need nurses, so I mean, you could pray about it and you can risk it. I mean, we need people to fight on D-Day, right? We need Marines to fight. I mean, we know like 25% of them are going to die, but we need them to fight, right? In a war. Knowing that 25% of the Marines will die, right? So it's kind of like that situation right now. Yeah, a lot of nurses will die. I'm predicting 10,000 nurses will die by Christmas. But it's not like all the nurses will die. There are like over 3 million nurses. So 10,000 nurses is dropping the bucket. You know, so majority of nurses won't die, but some nurses will die. And that could be you. That's just a reality that you have to think about. You have to do the cost benefit analysis, and then you have to make your decision, But, most people will just kind of drift through history, drift through life, and some will just end up dying and leave their children orphans, and they should have probably spent some time thinking about it, I would argue. Because these are not normal times, these are COVID-19 times. And a lot of tragedy, human tragedy can happen, not just in the hospital, but outside of hospital. Secondary, tertiary repercussions. So you need to think about those things. That's kind of important. So especially like doctors, nurses, but more nurses, because I think nurses, it's more dangerous for nurses than doctors. I don't know. I mean, I'm not a doctor, so I can't speak for a doctor, but I think nurses are at higher risk than doctors because nurses take care of patients at close proximity far more than doctors do, I would say, on a consistent basis. Yeah, I think nurses are probably it's probably the most dangerous job right now in America, heading into the flu season. But I'm happy to be a nurse to help you and save you, and but I don't want to risk my life dying in an ICU. That's why, or emergency room. These are like death jobs with death. Yeah. But if some people like to live on the edge of death and life, So more power to you if you're one of these individuals working in emergency room ICU. Yeah, just more power to you. Just not me. I'm never gonna do bungee jumping. You're not gonna force me to do bungee jumping. I'm never doing bungee jumping. I'm never doing skydiving. Hey, I'm not gonna engage in that kind of risky behavior. Even for a woman who looks like that, I'm not going to do skydiving. I mean, I'm just saying right now, in case you're a woman who looks like that, who may want to date me, yeah, I'm not going to bungee jump for you. I'm not going to skydive for you. So you got to accept that. If you're into that kind of thing, Yeah. Anyway, yeah, I'm glad that you tuned into this show. I'm happy to share updates and insights and give you some ideas and advice. I know you need practical advice at a time like this, right? Because like highfalutin ideological ideas, they're not going to help you. You need to make decisions from day to day, right? You have to make decisions about your children. You have to make your decisions about your job. You have to make practical decisions. That's what you need to make, right? We're not in the age of ideology right now. We're in the age of death, COVID-19 death. So you have to make decisions that are going to preserve your life, preserve the life of your children. That has to take precedence over anything else. You know, there's no other thing that's important to you right now. You need to preserve your life and your children's life. That has to be your prime directive. We're not living in a normal America like 2019 America, where you don't have to worry about life and death situation every day. No, this right now, COVID-19 America, you have to worry about it every day. You know, how do I preserve my life? How do I preserve my children's lives? You have to. This is a killer virus. It's a predator. COVID-19 is a predator out to kill you and your children. And if you just like unassuming Bambi deer, you know, just like enjoying whatever in the forest, you're gonna get eaten alive by a tiger. Yeah. You know, you can't be that innocent like Bambi. Yeah. Yeah, so you know, I hope you will watch this show again tomorrow. It's a daily show. I bring you practical, you know, advice, you know, advice that you can use to survive COVID-19, because the purpose for why this show was created is to save you and your children from COVID-19. So I'm going to give you a lot of practical advice that's going to help you survive, help your children survive. That's why this show is significant, you know, because I march for your life. I march for your life. And I don't blame the fake media, because they're like up in the air, saying things that don't really apply to real world. Like they're not living in reality like these liberal media. But as you can see, I live in the reality. I care about the reality. I care about saving you and your children's life in the real world, not in the fictitious world, right? And that's why this show is valuable. And that's why this show is far better than like CNN and ABC, Fox News, you know, PBS, you know, because I address issues that really concerns you. Because I prioritize your life. I don't prioritize the economy. I prioritize your life. The priority of this show is how can we preserve your life? How can we preserve your children's life? The economy doesn't even come into the equation here. I mean, it does come into the equation, but it's not primary, secondary. Because what good is all the money and wealth if you die, right? So I operate from like, you are important, you know, you first. You know, American economy could sink. You could always rebuild American economy, but if you die, that's the end of your life. That's game over for you. You know what I'm saying? So this show, I march for your life, and I prioritize your life, right? That's why I'm different from everything else out there. Everything else out there, they don't put your life first. They put other things first. They put like politics first, or economy first, or you know, they put something else first. I'm putting your life first. And that's why this show is the most important show you'll watch every day until COVID-19 is over. And, you know, as I said, COVID-19 won't be over. Yeah. Harry's really quiet today. But then Harry's quiet every day. So, yeah. Anyway, yeah, I'm glad you joined me today. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. I hope that you'll be well and that your children will be well too. See you tomorrow. Bye.